Welcome to the Death Talk podcast. The vision for this podcast is to break the culture of silence surrounding death and dying. I'm your host, Lisa Murray. So welcome back to the Death Talk podcast. This is Lisa, and I'm really happy to be interviewing Rachel Engstrom today. And you'll get to know more about what I love about her. You'll get it as soon as she starts talking. You'll understand. Those of you who are now starting to know me, Rachel is the author of Wife, Widow, Now What? How I Navigated the Cancer World and How You Can Too. And she just has an amazing story. And I love that she is giving back, looking back and putting out her hand to the next person coming up that unfortunate trail. So I would like to welcome you, Rachel, to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. Happy Friday.
Yeah, I'm so happy it's Friday. Okay, so I am really excited to talk with you because you have like a kindred spirit in the sense of like you've been through something and then you wanted to help. You want to help others that are going down the same path. And honestly, I don't think granted, I haven't really been researching a lot of cancer survival books, but I don't think I've seen anything like what you're doing. Is this pretty rare?
Yeah. And you know what? I wrote it originally specifically for cancers, from a cancer spouse to other cancer spouses or significant others. And the more I talk about it and the more I just am seeing what's out there, it's really applicable to any sort of catastrophic illness or injury or, chronic disability or things like that. So it really is the first of its kind. It's like a memoir love story with all the navigational resources. So yes, you are correct. There's nothing like this out there. I could have used this.
Yeah.
Which is why I did it.
Right. Well, thank you. And I'm sorry that you had to go through what you had to go through to get this information.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell a little bit about like, how did all this start for you? You were
yes.
Everything was normal, and take it away.
Yeah, everything was pretty normal. In the summer, fall of 2010, I started having like these horrific ovarian cyst rupture and things like that. So it was kind of trying to figure out my own health, endometriosis, might not be able to have kids, things like that. So I'm trying to just navigate being young 20s. Young, I was 28, but young, late 20s,
That's
early
young.
30s. Yeah. What I'm doing, I'd been with my guy from the time I was 19. He was 26. My parents couldn't say anything because they were that age when they got married. I was like, who's this other guy in this other, because I'm from a smallish town in Michigan. So I was like, who's this older guy with my little daughter? And I'm the youngest of four. But, he worked nights. So the whole time that we dated, and then until he got sick, I was able to be my own person, figure out who I was, but still have this, really strong relationship that made me who I was in my life, part of someone's half. And then, I tried to have kids, different things like that. And then I had my own health issues. And then on New Year's Eve, 2010, we get Chinese food and he gets a fortune cookie that says, you're about to have a major life change. We didn't know what that meant. Is 15 days later, after him not feeling well and having many tests and different things, it would be that he was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. So he was ultimately sick for 2 years and 3 months. And got really, really sick, got a lot better. We were navigating through this world, trying to figure out what all of it was. I had to figure out very quickly how to, navigate working 8 hours, then running home, letting the dog out, then running to the hospital for a couple hours. I don't have any family here. So I was doing all of it myself the first 5 weeks. And then my parents came and took shifts living with us. They'd been married 45 years at the time. Now it's 55 years. So they're 65 and 72. And they just decide, okay, we're going to uproot ourselves and I'll be here, 3 weeks. She'll be here, 3 weeks, and we'll see each other for a couple hours, a couple days here and there in between. But they did that whole time. And it was just this amazing gift that later, now that my husband is gone, it's something that I have to forever connect me with my parents, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But he got sick again. so they were able to find out when he first got sick. However, they figured out, the leukemia had only been in his body like 2 weeks or so, but it was like 97% of his blood was infiltrated with cancer. And then when he got sick again, it was like 6%, but it was enough that it would have mutated and gotten more and more and more. So he had to have a bone marrow transplant. And it turned out all the preparation for that, the months and months of preparation of the chemo to get his body ready, and then the radiation and chemo the week before was just too much. I had a surgery for endometriosis across town while he was having his preparations for that. And then ultimately all that chemo and radiation ripped apart his lungs, liver, lungs, kidney, and bladder. So the day after his transplant, he started to really go downhill, and he had stem cell cord, umbilical cord from a baby, the stem cell, what am I trying to say? The transplant from that. And it ultimately took after 60 days. And what's interesting is, if you're not aware of it, which you probably aren't, because I wasn't until I was in this world, when you get someone's bone marrow, you actually take on some of their DNA. So it was really interesting. I was told by the nurses, like, someone that might have had jet black curly hair would have totally straight blonde hair. Like it takes on.
Oh my God.
I know. Isn't that cool?
What?
So it was interesting because he was starting to get some red hair.
It's like a sci-fi movie. That's crazy.
I know. You lose your eyebrows. You lose your, it's very bizarre that you lose your eyebrows as well, but you lose your eyebrows, you lose your hair everywhere. And then it started to come back and he started to have this reddish beard. It was just very bizarre and very cool. And all these freckles that he hadn't had before and things like that.
Oh my gosh.
But I know, unfortunately, he got a blood clot in his lungs, and he was 1 in a million to be able to go from that on life support in the ICU back to being on just low flow oxygen and into rehab out of the hospital, learning how to walk and everything like that. Like, the fact that he was able to do that in a 2-week time frame was just miraculous. But then things went downhill again. And 2 days before I turned 31, he called me. I didn't know we were talking to each other for the last time, and he couldn't breathe, and they put him on another vent. And then I got to the hospital, and I was told by many, many doctors, I'm sorry. And, I did have the gift that I was able to, we were able to say, I love you back and forth 3 times on the phone before they put him under. And then 2 days later, I turned 31. And then 2 days later, I'm told, Rachel, buddy, by one of his doctors that was super sweet. Rachel, buddy, today's the day.
Oh gosh.
And then I made a heaven playlist. And I mean, you can ask me anything you want about the death, but I made a heaven playlist, and then ultimately just waited for his heart to stop and him to stop breathing after they took him off the vent. And I was 31 and 2 days old. So it was pretty crazy. And I had to restart my whole life. I'd been with this person in 11 and a half years. So my book is Caring Bridge. Are you familiar with that? Have you heard of that before, Lisa?
No, I haven't heard of that.
It's an organization that's here, but I believe that it's
and you're in Minnesota, right?
Minnesota, yeah.
Okay.
I believe it's global, but what it is, it's a webpage, like a medical blog. So if you or your person or family members going through something, instead of texting who it's going through, the family, or emailing or calling, or messaging or snapping or whatever it would be these days, you do your little blog about what they're going through, and then they get on this website, and then they get an email notification, all of your supporters.
Oh my gosh.
So
I love that.
It's really cool. So my book is made up of the Caring Bridge post, a Facebook post, later or Instagram post, and that came along, but it's in real time, me narrating everything that I'm going through, from diagnosis to treatment to finances to work to disability. And when I'm figuring it all out and telling you my love story, intersplicing all of that, I'm also listing how to do it, where are the websites for it, how to revamp your finances, how to do all of it. So I'm telling you, this is how I did it. This is what a deductible is. This is what a copay is. This is what you need to talk to your person's employer about. This is, all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, it's like we're having a cup of tea, or I'm holding your hand and I'm walking you through it all in real time as I did it with my entries. from that time.
Invaluable. I mean, that's not only from the emotional support and just knowing that somebody else has gone through something that you're going through, but all that practical information. I mean, my God, because that's the thing. Like my brother went through he had a little cancer scare. And then my friend who was fighting cancer for like 3 years, she ended up dying. But the medical parts and the things you have to know about everything, it's just like unbelievably overwhelming. So okay, that is amazing. I love that you did that.
Thank you. Yeah. And it's really like, I'm trying to just I'm on as many you're probably close to my 30th podcast. I'm just trying to get the word out there, because it's like, I'm not friends with Oprah. I'm not friends with, you know what I mean? And it's just, I still have contacted her, but I've been on the local news and things like that. But like, I want to get this book out there to millions of people, because when I was going through it, I was so alone. Cancer really is really expensive, or any sort of catastrophic illness. This book is very applicable to COVID, all the people going through those things, but the uninsured expenses. So what your insurance does not pay for the average cancer patient is like $16,000 a year. So I talk about, the websites where I found money for gas cards, or, parking passes, or, all those types of things. Like you're just like a deer in headlights when you're going through all of it and you don't know what to do. So I actually have a friend that last week, she took a friend to the ER that had just like GI gut pain. And it turns out he has colon cancer that spread to his liver and lungs.
Oh gosh.
And as horrifying as that is, my friend that it's her friend that, it's not looking good for her friend, unfortunately. It was really amazing to be able to be like, the book I gave you, give that to them, highlight the sections, because she had to pick up his parents from the airport because he's from a different state. And it was just like, okay, highlight all the sections on this and this and this. This is what they're going to need. Because really, when you are going through it, you don't have the time or effort, or you know what I mean? Like, you're so tired. It's so daunting, but you do have to address those things. And like, I learned really quickly at 28, I had to be his power of attorney, because when he's going through all this medical stuff and I need to do these things on his behalf, or, I moved in with him and he had the cable box, and the cable box is in his name. So I can't do anything about it. And you're standing in line for hours or on the phone for hours, and you don't think about the fact that, you're going to need to be able to have him sign off on something for you to make these decisions, and then the more important things, the healthcare directives, what if he does die? What if I'm healthy and I have one of those for myself that my parents have? Because it's just, my late husband, he didn't have long-term disability insurance, because he's like, I'm 35. Why do I need it? And now I'm like, everybody get it, because, we could have had like 2 years more of income based on what his former salary was. Had you had that? So like all these types of things, nobody really tells you what you really are going to need or may need, or all those things. So I'm quite blatant about, promoting, please read this, because even if it's not you or your person or your sibling, it might be someone that that you can be like, I get it, or I get it to the extent of what I can. And I want to be able to support you in a tangible way. And here you go.
As you were saying this, I was thinking like my mom is getting a little bit older, and I'm thinking like I'm going to have to have that for that. Cause I don't even know like half of her accounts, like where does she, I know she has a storage, but she's very independent, but that could change at any moment. And I'm like the person that lives closest to her. So it's like, so yeah, wow. That could be for anything.
Yeah, it could. And the thing is, like, I grew up with a dad who, he's about to be 82, but he told me as a kid, it just scared the crap out of me as a kid. But he'd be like, yep, I could die any day. A plane could fly over the house and the wheel could fall off and it could go through the ceiling and crush me. But you know what? It's true.
Yeah, I know.
It's true. And like when you learn how to drive and your parents are like, it's a death trap, be careful. Yeah. It's totally true. And it's, I mean, a lot of times we don't have to worry about ourselves. It's the other people on the road or whatever, but every day is truly a gift. We don't know.
Right. So were you always like a really clear thinker and organizer of information? Is that like what you bring to the table in life, do you think?
I think so. I have my master's degree in social work. So just being a research nerd, I love helping with resources and figuring things out and doing all that. But like, I mean, I'm trying to navigate, is my husband going to die, working, running back and forth, so tired. And yeah, I'm like sitting on the couch spending, 18 hours over the course of a week, just trying to come up with extra finances and things like that. So I definitely did have to search really, really hard. I mean, I was doing all that, when I was 28, shortly after I got sick. So it was really tough for me. And my thought was, if that was really hard for me, what do you do when you're elderly or you don't have a computer or all those types of things?
Or if you're just not like, because I was always an executive assistant at different jobs and stuff. So I was always like the organizer of, just information. And I realized a lot of people are not good at that at all. Like they get overwhelmed. They're like, I don't know where the paper is. What did I do with it? And I'm like, well, here it is. It's filed over here, or whatever. So yeah, I think what you are is so valuable because you sound, even the way you describe everything, you sound very clear. And you're someone that I would want to like, hold your hand and follow you through that jungle of information.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, like I'm a big proponent on, okay, the first thing you need to do is get a notebook and a pen and write down everything the doctor says, because you're not going to remember. We had something where, so when I was at work and anyone else that was there, we had like a communication notebook because you have to write the information down because A, it's in jargon. You're not really going to know. But B, there's so many numbers and so many statistics and so many things. But if you write it all down, then you'll be able to track it and know it, all those types of things. And you want to be there for your person. And they definitely are not anywhere emotionally or mentally to be able to keep track of that information as well. You're going to have to do that for them or have somebody else do that if you can't be there.
Right. Was there anything that stands out to you right now that when it happened or when you came across it actually kind of stumped you or surprised you that you weren't sure you were going to get through?
So I'm very funny and very frank about everything, which sounds like you're gathering that already. But I have these instances where it's like, we had asked his mom for stainless steel pots and pans for Christmas, right? Because it was like January 11th when he starts feeling bad and January 15th when he's sick. So it's like still the time frame to return stuff. And what kind of blew my mind is like, so I'm like all sweaty in my Minnesota gear, all wrapped up because it's freezing outside. And I'm in like a Macy's in a mall. And I loathe malls. I live by the Mall of America. And it's like,
oh yeah, the Malls of America.
Yeah, it's like I only go there if I have to. But it's but like I went to take back they weren't what we wanted, so I went to take something back, and like the girl at the counter, I mean, it's her job, right? It's just her job to say what she has to say, but she's like, we have a sale tomorrow. We can't exchange this today. And I was just like, my husband's in the hospital and blah, 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 blah. Like I wasn't. And then she's like, let me get my manager. Cause I was like, I don't have time to come back tomorrow. Yeah. So it wasn't until things popped up like that I was aware of how strung out I was. I mean, because it's like, it and you're feeling it, but you're not really aware of how you're keeping it all in check. So when he was first diagnosed, your first thought is like, don't cry. Not that I couldn't have, but it was just like, I was just like, you got to keep your feelings in check because somebody has to be the strong one. I was so scared he was going to die. I didn't know what was going to happen. So it's when you're doing all that and you're balancing all of it, you're learning you need to have your own person that you can talk to and not put your crap on the person that's going through it. Because they're scared enough. They have enough of their own stuff going on. Yeah. But it was like a trial and error thing, just figuring out where to get the support, how to feel supported, how to just feel. I mean, mine is my faith, and I write my book open to anybody, whether you're of faith or not, or, man, woman, gay, straight, whatever you may be. I had my book very inclusive because I think that is so important for everyone to know they're supported along the way. Mm. But for me, it was just really difficult to feel like I could breathe. And I mean, I did it and I did it all really, really well, but you just feel like you're on a treadmill you can't unplug, that doesn't stop. And I think that the toughest thing was just realizing like, and I was very calm about everything. Like it was like, oh, okay, this is your hospital room is our new life. And I brought a lamp and blankets and the nurses are like, oh, the lovebirds are in their apartment. And, it was our new norm. But at the same time, you're just constantly like, what's next? What do we need to do next? What's this? What's that? So when you do hear, you're in Target and the lady a couple aisles over is complaining on her cell phone to somebody when Bluetooth is first new. So everyone's talking on their cell phones or whatever. You're hearing her complain about needing to get more cough syrup because she has a lingering cold, and you realize you're about to lose your shit on a stranger because a cough is nothing compared to cancer. You're like, well, maybe I am a little stressed out, know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those types of things. And I think that was the hardest thing, is I wasn't aware of how hard it was hitting me at the time. It was really surprising when I did have these things happen to be like, whoa, Rachel, you got to calm down.
Well, it's like almost like the downside of being really good at something is that, you're still a human being at the end of the day, whether you're really bad at stuff or you're good at stuff, you're still a human being. That's what connects us all. But when you're good at stuff, it's like you're just on a roll, and it makes you feel like you're in control, and you can lose yourself in the information and organizing things and making sure everything's thought of. And it's a great skill set to have. But I'm like now like wondering, how did you take care of yourself? Like, how were you? What were some of your self-care tips just for you?
Yeah. So I always had like a friend or one of my sisters or brother or my parents that I would call on my way home. Like leaving him at the hospital for 5 weeks straight and then going home after work after seeing him was super hard, because it's just not natural. And you feel bad. Like you really do feel like they're your little kid and they're so vulnerable, and, they don't want to be there. You don't want them to be there. And then you just go home and, spend time with I had a dog and 2 cats, and spend time with them. And then you, go to bed and get up the next day and start it all over again. And it's just so tough. So what I would do is, what was so hard is leaving him was hell, to the point where I have what's called the elevator episode, where it's so many times I can't leave his room. And then I get to the elevator and I run back, and just this one night, it was so hard, and I would go outside and it would be like -10, and it would just smack me in the face. And we have tunnels here. So he's treated at the University of Minnesota. So there are actual tunnels that can get you inside during the winter. But I would make myself walk a couple blocks to the parking garage. It would kind of sober me up, the freezing cold. And then I would call my siblings or parents or a friend on the way home, and they would know, okay, we're not going to talk about ourselves. We're just going to let Rachel detox for, 10, 15 minutes on her way home. And then, it's just having people in your life that understand it's not about them at that point. It's just about helping you kind of download things like that. So I had people like that to be able to talk to.
That's great.
Yeah. And then a year after he got sick, I got a therapist, and I got someone that had worked with people that had cancer before. So that was really helpful. In life right now, my job, I work at a behavioral health insurance company, getting people connected to counseling. And I actually have a counseling appointment myself tomorrow. I just think it's really, everybody should have a therapist. It doesn't mean that you have to have mental problems by any means, but having a third party person that doesn't know your world that you can talk to and get skills from, I think is one of the most valuable things anyone can do. And in my book, I talk about lots of employers have the employee assistance program. It's called the EAP. That's actually what I do for a living. Is where it's prepaid sessions by the employer that's separate from your health insurance. So if you are listening to this and you're interested, ask your HR department if you have an EAP. But what it provides is, outside of your health insurance, it's prepaid sessions, whether it's 3 or 5 or 8 or 10, for you to go see someone at no cost, for you and everyone within your household. Yeah. So I didn't have that at the time, but that's something a lot of people have. And it's just excellent. So being able to talk to someone, I remember I was practically like skipping after my appointments, even though I was so tired in my world. I'd get my like Chipotle burrito and drink and, sit there and eat and talk to her. And then I just feel like, oh my gosh, someone gets me. So I think just the biggest thing is having that outlet, having that support. Also, I had incredible neighbors. I have a whole section in the book of when people want to help, tangible,
good.
actual things to give them, to tell people.
Oh, that's great.
You can't even, when you're going through it, you can't even think of, what you want or what would be helpful. You're just in shock.
And people usually say like, let me know. And you're like, I don't even know. Like, let me know what I can do. And you're like, I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then back then, so this is 2010 and then he died in 2013. Like it doesn't seem that long ago, but as far as resources and websites, like now there's like Meal Train where you can sign up for people to bring you food or, all kinds of different things. So it's just being able to have those resources. We had a guy that was in his 70s that lived across the street and he had worked inside his whole life and he loved working outside. So in the winter, he and his wife worked on our driveway. In the summer, he mowed our lawn. So all those things are so important because you don't have time for that when you're sick or you're taking care of somebody. So it's all those types of tasks. I have the whole thing after he died of like how to plan a funeral on the cheap, like all these different things. So I navigate how to like do your finances when someone's ill, but I have how to do your finances and figure out life after they die. I have all that as well, but I have the reason I brought up both alive and after they've died, as far as how people want to help, like use people's strengths. If someone likes to bake, have them make stuff for the nurses. Nurses were like, so it's like, the nurses, I mean, they loved my husband anyway, but like I would bring them brownies and cookies and then they'd be like, hi, every time I was there, and it's those things are huge.
Yeah.
As far as it's, it's like, oh my gosh, your wife brought this today. Or if you are having a funeral or having whatever, have someone that's good at baking, do that. Have someone that, I had a friend buy all the flowers that were plants then I could give away as gifts for the memorial service and things. So it's just, there are lots of ways that people really can help, like play to their advantage, play to their gifts, and they'll be able to help. It's a win-win. So I have all that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah. And people want to help. They want to do something. Yeah. They feel so helpless. So I think people go, oh, well, I don't want to impose. No, you're giving them a gift by giving them a project. Because then that they offered or that they're good at, like you're saying. So I think it's so important to remember that.
Yeah, because they can't make the pain or illness go away, but they can do something that's tangible that will really help that you don't have time for.
Right, exactly. And so did you do anything to like come into your body? Did you have to do massages or yoga? Did you go for walks? Like, how did you ground yourself? Like after all the talking and information and all that stuff?
Yeah, so I actually, I got massages for a year, but I was always so stressed out and would have migraines that I couldn't relax. It was not worth it.
Oh my gosh.
But I did join the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, which I'll talk about more later too. I'm very dear and close to them. They have a team and training program where, are you familiar with that?
No, not at all.
So you can have no athletic ability to be a marathon runner.
Oh, you know what? I did. I ran a half marathon. I raised money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I did it.
So it's that where you can have no athletic ability or be a marathon runner.
No athletic.
Yep. Me either. And I'm a walker, but I did a race going from walking, just walking my dog to who's annoying me right now, to walking a half marathon. I did it in 2012 when he was alive, in 2014 in honor of him after he died, and raising money. And while doing that, I pushed myself physically, which got my mind off things. Cause you train Wednesday nights and Saturday mornings every single week for months.
I remember that. Yep.
But then you're also surrounded by people who know people who have been through that as well. Right. So that was a way to get me to exercise and do those things more. I also, here and there would go to a concert with a friend, things like that. Yeah. And I went on a couple different silent retreats. One was Buddhist. I'm not Buddhist. One was Catholic. I'm not Catholic, but I just found what I could that was affordable just to get away and have some reprieve and do different things like that, which not everyone always understood. And like after he died, I went to Alaska. My friends had a fundraiser and I went to Alaska by myself on a cruise. And I was always like, I've seen the Titanic. Tell me what you will. I will never go on a cruise, but I didn't think I'd be a widow at 31 either.
Right.
And not everybody in my close circle understood why I used the money that was raised for me for that. My parents were like, oh no, she needs to go. Like she needs to get away. And then, so that was very healing, and like being around glaciers, and I would live in Alaska in a heartbeat. I love it. But being around glaciers and mountains and things like that really do just make you feel the size of a pea compared to how big they are. And it's very therapeutic and just so humbling.
It also sounds very refreshing, like just kind of fresh in your mind.
Yeah, it was like 75% amazing, 25% total sadness and despair. I mean, I'm walking and trekking around Alaskan rainforest. Meanwhile, I'm taking Percocet and Vicodin because I have endometriosis pain so bad I can barely walk.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I don't know if I said 5 days before he had his transplant. Yeah. I had the surgery as well. So like 6 months after he died, I just threw in the towel and had a hysterectomy. So there was another loss there itself.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then 6 months after he died, his cat became diabetic and it got really sick and I had to put the cat down.
It's so hard when it comes like that, when everything keeps
like
rolling.
So it was
grief.
it was just like thing after thing after thing. But being able to look back and be like, you went to Alaska. It was amazing. Here are the pictures.
Yeah.
But it was very healing. And, it helped me kind of recharge what I was going to do. I was blessed to have, when he was in remission in the summer of 2012, I switched jobs. And one of the things they offered was a life insurance policy. So I took out one on myself. I took out one on him. So I was blessed enough to have $30,000 and not have to work for like 9 months. And I totally, fully recognize not a lot of people have that opportunity.
Right.
But I was also healing from like major surgery and things like that. So it was really good to have that time. It was also really bizarre to be like, I'm a grown up and I should be working right now, but my husband's dead and I have to figure out my life and, all those things.
It's like, whatever it takes for us to kind of come back to life after going through something, especially a dragged out illness, where there's just, that is such on a different level. It's so pulls so much from us, and whatever it takes for you to get back to life and get back to you, I don't care who understands it. Like that's what you have to do, whatever that is.
Yeah. And it's very hard. Like people close to me were like, after like 6 months, were like, Rachel, you should just decide to be happy and move on. And it was like, ugh.
Oh God.
I mean, you just want to punch people. And I mean, one of the worst things you can say to somebody is like, I know how you feel. Like if you have not gone through anything similar, it's just like, no, thanks. No, thanks. Let me shut the door in your face. Let me close the car door on your hand. Like, no.
Well, I really didn't realize how much I didn't understand. I don't think I was bad before I lost people, but I think after I lost a couple significant people in my life, I really kind of got embarrassed. And I was like, oh my God, I was trying to think of all the times I talked to people and what I said to them after they lost somebody. And it makes you realize so much more. Like, and me and my mom will go to dinner, and like, if a waitress is a certain, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but we can tell whether someone's lost somebody or not.
Yeah.
There's a certain vibe that they have, that it's almost like they embrace the unknown. They embrace the fact that we don't know what happened or how the hell we're going to get through it or how we got through it or whatever. It's sort of something like that. And that's the best thing you can say to someone is just, I don't even know, but I'm here for you.
I can't imagine, do you want to tell me? Or like, I was piecing together 3 jobs, 3 part-time jobs, working with children with disabilities, adult with a disability, doing garage sales, selling anything, everything on eBay and Amazon, and, to make ends meet. Once the money ran out, because I have this house I think someone's going to help me fill with kids and pay for and all these things. And because, I mean, when you are this young and you're going through something like that, you don't have the luxury to believe anything but that they're going to be fine. You're going to go back to the regular life at the end of the TV show with the music that comes in and everything's wonderful. Because, I mean, I had to be the strong one, right? One of us was sick. I had to be the strong one until they told me 5 days before he died that he was going to die. I didn't think he was going to. I was pricing out walkers and things like that, thinking he'd come home, he'd get stronger. So when he did die, I was not at all prepared for it. Years later, I could look back in hindsight and say, yes, you've had so much peace based on the fact that you watched him, very ill die. And I know compared to other horrible forms of death, whether it be suicide or, young widow groups, I'm trying to find support on Facebook and whatnot. And it's people that their spouses have killed themselves after war, because the PTSD demons and all those types of things, or just tragic work accidents or car accidents or whatnot. But I know that it was a gift that I was able to be with him, and his body fell apart, and, we only get one body. And I totally feel blessed that I was able to be with him for that. But it's really, really tricky to try to make it make sense in a way that doesn't make you a really hard, bitter person. And I do have a chapter in my book called Bitter Betty, but it's one of those, because it's like the second time the year after he died, and I'm fundraising for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society for the race. I want people to donate because I don't want them to know what it's like to be me. But instead of like LLS has amazing advancements and it's like my person died, and I don't want you to know what it's like to be me. And I actually had someone point out, I hated her at the time, but I had someone point out, like, you're pretty negative in your post and whatnot. And
wow.
Yeah. And I was just like, I was so mad, but it was true. She just mirrored me. She showed me the mirror of what I was doing. And 2 weeks ago, with a team of friends behind me, I actually just raised $51,000 for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I ran for Woman of the Year here in Minnesota, and I did not win. I didn't care that I didn't win. I just wanted to get this grant. So if you raise 50,000 or more, you can get a grant in your person's name, and then pick what you want it to go towards. And I know someone who's going through a really complicated form of lymphoma that needs more research. So I'm just like high as a kite excited about that, because it's for the first few years, it was just like, well, my person died. How am I supposed to celebrate the advancements that LLS is making? When it didn't work out for you, you're not cheering that it works out for other people.
Yep.
But I did have to distance myself from the cancer world for years. Years before I could pick my book's totally a labor of love of PTSD. But I did it to be able to help other people, because I was alone. And I want people to know that you're not, and that I've had a horrific thing happen. And even to this day, I have someone super toxic in my life that's awful, that makes my life super hard, that's someone I have to have in my life. I have IBS. I have lymphocytic colitis that I got when I started a new job, where I ultimately met the person that I'm married to now. So it's not like I like to share my story with, I went through these horrific things, and I'm super happy in my life. I'm super happy, relatively really healthy. But I want people to know it's not like I went through hell and I wrote a book and now everything's good.
Right. No, that's part of why I didn't even want to do a podcast, and why I never wanted, I know exactly what you're talking about, because that's the whole thing. I didn't want to feel like I was benefiting from it. Like, I'm great now, I've pivoted, I didn't want any of that.
Actually, as of like a week ago, I started talking about the fact that I'm married again, because they were like, yeah, people want to hear stories of hope, or because I don't talk about that until the epilogue in my book for privacy reasons. But I also I don't want it to take away from the significance of, I'm trying to say, I've been there. This is what my story looked like. And I want you to be able to gain some resources to help yourself through it. But I think people do want to know it's possible to be happy and healthy afterwards as well. I'm finding out more and more. So let them know as well. Like it's just a shit show. There's no other way to put it. It's awful, but to go through these types of things, but there really is joy within it. There's beauty within it. Like I said at the very beginning, he works nights. I didn't see him Monday through Friday. We got to see each other 7 days a week when we had it for 2 years that we would not have had we had the, medical treatment to be able to help him. And I remember his physician's assistant and research nurse from the clinical trial he was in came to the service, and they're like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, are you kidding me? You helped give me time I wouldn't have had. And, but it does take a lot of work to be able to reflect on things and know, there are positives that can come out of something very negative as well, that most likely will help make you into your 2.0 of who you are.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's like we straddle these two worlds, because on the one hand, like as I'm healing and getting better. And, I'm doing all these different projects, and I've got my film festival. I've got 2 podcasts, and there's only one of my films screened in a festival in LA. It's like, I'm starting to feel better, but then part of me is like, but wait, don't forget, for like 2 years, I wanted to die. And that trauma, I'll never forget when I found out my friend was killed. I'll never forget, when my brother died shortly after, unexpectedly. I'll never forget crawling on the ground, screaming a sound I've never heard before. So it's like this weird world I live in between, where it's like, I want to make sure that is acknowledged, and I never get too far away from that, but that I don't live in it either. Cause what the heck, I would not be able to get out of bed every day and I wasn't able to get out of bed every day for a long time.
Yeah.
And had I not, finally, I just made the realization, it's not that I want to be a better version of myself, because I kind of liked who I was back before the first death. I was fine with who I was, but given what's happened, the new me is the me that was traumatized by the deaths. And so really, it's like I'm comparing who I am now to who I was after they died. So do I want to be the person I was right after they died, or do I want to be a better version? And I'm like, okay, I want to be a better version now. But I'm not saying I'm a better version than what I was when I met them, or when I was with them when they were alive.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So it's a weird thing. And unless you've gone through it, you don't understand that. You're like, we're like living in these 2 worlds in a way.
Yeah. It's funny that you say the film stuff. I'm not pitching myself to you right now. I'm just saying, like, I'm trying to figure out how to make my book into a film too, because I remember writing it. So it took me a few years to write, but I remember writing it, and on Hulu, I would keep seeing commercials for Facebook Watch. There was like Elizabeth Olsen, like the other Olsen sister from the Olsen twins. She was in this series about being a widow, and I would watch the previews because they were in a commercial I had to watch. And it was like, oh, dude, no, shut up. You do not know what it's like.
Was she like getting it all wrong, or like?
Yeah, well, it was just like whatever it was like being a widow, da, 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 da. And it's like, no, you should get the story from someone who's actually been through it. And, I lost a lot of friends, not because people didn't care, but people don't know what to do with a 31-year-old widow. And like, just all these aspects no one talks about. It's like, there's the real grit, and that's what people really want to hear and know and see. And it's like, I'm just trying to figure out how to get that out there, because it's so real. And what's crazy is, how many thousands of people have been affected by COVID that are young widows and widowers, or in ways. And, I also don't take for granted the fact that I was able to physically be with him. I cannot imagine
I know
during COVID not being able to be or say bye on FaceTime. Like, that's just awful. That's not okay.
Right. I know for me, I lost a bunch of people. I call it a death cluster, because I lost a bunch of people in a short period of time. And the 3 main people that I lost within a couple of years, I was around one of my friends right after the 3rd person died. And she goes, God, what am I? I'm worried that I'm next. Like, everyone's dying around you. Like, she was looking at me like I was this poisoner walking around, like killing people. I'm like, dude, I'm the one who's losing people. I have nothing to do with it. It just she's not my friend anymore, obviously, but that's like, good. It's people just say such horrible things. A lot of people don't want to be near death or near illness, because they feel like it's going to like somehow rub off on them, or it's a part of life they just don't want to deal with, which, okay, that's good. Weed them out, because, you just need to be around the people that are dealing with it, because they get you and they do want to be around you. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But that was really hurtful.
It is. I have a friend that I was like, had been best friends with her for like 12 years. I was going to be the maid of honor in her wedding. And I totally like cut the cord, pulled the string, said bye over Facebook Messenger. Cause we were talking about something, and she was like, I have to go back to work, but we'll talk about this later. And like, I had an engagement party for her, and was going to have a bridal shower for her, and like went to the bridal fair for her, which was just painful. And it was just, she was like, I don't think you're happy for me. And she was trying to be helpful in her own way, but it had become toxic. And no one really understood. Like, my parents were like, oh, she was always so nice. And it's like, no, nope. And like, even if people do have good intentions, you really do find that when you have traumatic things like this happen, your relationships change, and that's okay. And not everybody might get it, but you have to do what's right for you.
No, totally. It's your survival. You can't be, I don't know, like how we normally are in life, where we have all these allowances for people's weirdness or shortcomings, or, oh yeah, that's my friend who says weird things, but she's really sweet. It's like, it gets to the point where you're like, if they're not, I don't know, it's just, if they're not like sort of
if
in
they're
that
hurting
same
you more
place.
than helping you.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Exactly. And, it probably goes the other way too, because, they just want to live their life. And once you've experienced a death or an illness or something serious like this, it is like you've gone to another place, and they are like, oh, I just want my little fun friendship back. And you're like, well, I don't know. I can't do
I'm
that.
not there yet.
Yeah. I don't even know if I'll ever be there again. I've totally been changed, and I can tell you have as well. And it's good. It's okay. I mean, that's life. We're not here to stay the same, the whole time. I mean, it's okay if we change, as long as we're a good person and you feel maybe not enjoy our lives. We don't have to, I'm going to get all down and depressed about it. No, you can enjoy your life, but I do think it's important to have some kind of connection to what you're doing and some sense of meaning or fulfillment. And other than that, I mean, the rest of it, I don't know. Everyone seems to come and go. You just have to hold on and just survive your part of it, I think.
They do. And the nice thing is, at least for me, like I've had people come in, I've lost people, which has been painful. Like like a really good friend of mine, she just stopped talking. It's a friend that lives in a different state, and she broke up with someone, and it turned out it was temporary. Well, I didn't know it was going to be temporary. And I was like, oh, well, maybe God was just like, or when I was dating, God was like, nope, 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 next. And then she got back with that person. And it wasn't that I was trying to say, hey, your person's awful, but now they're refusing to talk to me. It's been almost a year. And like their parents live here, so I would see them when they would visit or whatever. But it's like, it takes a while to realize it's not you. It's the other people, but it doesn't make it any less painful. But you do realize I have a stepdaughter who's young, who's like 10. So I'm explaining to her how when I was little, I got bullied in school by little girls, which was awful. I'm just so glad there wasn't Facebook or anything like that back then. But
I know.
like, I'm just telling her and teaching her. It's hard to try to teach a child, don't care what others think, because of course you're going to. But even when you're little, like I remember I had these girls that were just awful, but then there was a girl that just was really nice and wanted to be my friend. And I wish, in hindsight, of course, I could have just been friends with her. Yeah. But that's the thing, is for as many toxic relationships or as things ebb and flow through time, there are people that really genuinely want to be there, that can make your life so much better and so much more positive. But when we're in the thick of it, we're focusing more on our pain and less on what, or we're focusing on what should be instead of what is. And I think that that's something that is a really hard lesson, but it's true. And it's just like, if you're a Debbie Downer, I'm super positive in that I'm like, I survived, after he died, I would have, I'd get so excited when it had been like, I'd be like, okay, it's been 13 months. It's been 14 months. It's been 15 months. Cause for me, it was like, I am surviving. I'm getting through it. I'm getting farther away from the death, meaning I'm making it. I'm okay. I didn't know what this would look like, but like, I'm just so excited to be here, to tell my story, to say I went through from A to Z back up to A again. And it was hell, but I did it. And life is freaking amazing. There are amazing, beautiful things. I am one of the happiest, most energetic people I know. I credit that to God's grace. But it's tough. But I also, I didn't surround myself with sappy emo music. I didn't watch super sad things. When I see, something that has to do with cancer or someone dying that's on Netflix or Amazon or Hulu, I'm like, nope. Like you really do have to pick and choose what you expose yourself to, that would drag you down or pick you up. And I think that we live in a really, we're just so driven by media and everybody else and what they're doing. Like you just really have to be mindful of what you're exposing yourself to. And that really will help your mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. What was your darkest point though? Like what was something that you were like, I don't know, like you were very challenged emotionally?
For me, it was dating. I say it in my book, so I'm not ashamed to say over the course of a couple of years, I went on 54 face-to-face dates because I just kept saying, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to put myself out there. I was drinking too much. I was partying too much. And that was something I had never done. I met my person when I was 19. So I'm like, I'm 32 now and trying to figure this out. But, a sister of mine was like, just spend time by yourself. Just figure out who, and I'm like, I haven't spent every hour by myself. What are you talking about? Like, I actually was so sad and depressed one day that I had one of the moms of the children that I worked for, I asked for a hug and she was like, why? And it was just so embarrassing to me, but like, I didn't have anyone that day or that moment. And I was so used to being someone's other half that I just kept dating, like, I want to say losers, but I just kept dating people that weren't the right fit for me. And I was chasing people, wanting them to love me, like, love me, man. I was being too like Bridget Jones. I was being too not valuing myself, but I was so tired of trying to fight this world on my own that I just wasn't treating myself as well. And it took me years later to be able to reflect on that. And I write about all of it in my book, but it was just not making the smartest choices. By the grace of God, I was protected, but just kind of being an idiot like that. But again, that was grief, Rachel. That was widow Rachel. That was me going through my hard time, but it was just so lonely. And I would get, a part-time job. And then, it was like, I stepped out of social services for a couple of years because it was just like, I can barely take care of myself. Right. And, it'd be like, I'd get a nanny job and then they're like, oh no, we can't afford a nanny. And you're like, you're my income. So it was just really hard balancing that with trying to date and I just wanted somebody to care about my day and doing different things like that. And, I'm still hanging out with friends and things like that throughout this process, but they're not giving me that one-on-one support I had for 11 and a half years. So it was just kind of a really ugly, down, lonely time of trial and error. And, as I say, licking the bottom of the barrel, just trying to figure out who I am and what in the world is going on.
Well, and also I think that you had put so much energy out that it sounds like you just wanted some energy to come to you. So you weren't using your normal discernment that you probably would have in any other time in your life, but you were just like, when boxers are fighting and then they start hugging each other in the ring. Yeah. And you're like, why are you guys hugging? You're supposed to be fighting. But I remember when I was a kid, I would ask my dad and he's like, they're tired. I'm like, yeah, but hug something else. Why would you hug the person you're fighting? But, right. So it's like, I'm sure that, but I feel like with you, like you just needed, it's probably how it is in the spiritual world that we just need something and it's there. But in the physical, we have to make sure we're coming from the right place and make sure we're healed and, give things time and be patient. And then the right person comes along, but we're like, can't you just be the right person? Like, what's your name again?
Yeah, you want
Ted?
it accelerated. Yeah. What's crazy is they're trying to do research, and I'm sure like behavioral therapists and different people, they're going to have a lot of info, but it's going to be really interesting to see in history books 20 years from now, what they're going to say, what kids are going to study about COVID. Mm-hmm. But there really there's a lot of data people are trying to, and I'd be very interested in to read it because I'm a nerd, but there's info that they're trying to calibrate, get all of it, however you want to say it, of what this has been like emotionally for people to not have physical touch. Mm-hmm. During COVID and all of these things. And I know didn't have family here, and you hang out with friends when they're available. You're available a lot when you're going through stuff by yourself, but when friends are available, you hug or whatever, but not having that regular hug, that regular support. It makes me super sad to think about, but I would hug my dog, and I write about all this in the book. Everything I've said on this, I write about in the book, but I would hug my dog and cry. And she would her breath on my neck was maybe for a week or two, the closest I got to anyone giving a crap about me. Mm-hmm. That was physically there. And that was just so isolating and so depressing and so bottom of the barrel for me. And I think that that's pretty accurate for a lot of people during these COVID times as well.
And thank God for our pets, and
Yeah.
thank God for art. Thank God for Netflix. Thank God for music. I mean, all those things that people just act like are side things. Before COVID, I think people have a whole new appreciation for like, okay, I need some really good quality series made to be released on Netflix or HBO. And I need a really good parakeet / bird / dog, whatever. Yeah. Cause I don't know if I would have gotten through so many different things. I mean, honestly, like when I didn't want to live, one of the things that made me want to live was thinking about, I have 3 dogs. They're all rescues. And I think who would take care of what would happen? Like what would happen with them? I wouldn't want anything to happen to them. So that was sort of like sometimes the only thing I could hold on to.
I had to get up every day to let the dog out and, feed everybody. And
yeah, it forces you out. Did you ever have any dreams or have you had any dreams? What was your husband's name? I'm sorry.
Grayson. That's okay.
Grayson. Did you have any dreams or have you had any dreams about Grayson?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I've had hundreds over the years. And when I was writing my book, they've gotten like really painful in the last year or so. So my book came out at the end of September, and I've had these ones where it's like our old apartment or our house. I go back there and he's there and he sees me, but he just doesn't want to know me. So it's like I have dreams like that. Or I had one a year or so after he died where I had to take him off life support again and do all over again. And it was like, I just cried the whole next day at work. It was just weird. I was working with a kid and I'm like, ugh. But I have these dreams where he just is like so rude, doesn't care, doesn't want to know me. I probably have one a week or so.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's weird, but
Rachel, that's so much. What do you think is that? Why do you think you're having those dreams?
I think it's because I recently did the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society stuff, but I'm very at peace with everything. And it's like, where I am now, like I will always love what I had with him that made me a piece of who I am, but I stopped loving him and being in love with him years ago, not because I'm in a new life, but because that's what you have to do to be able to survive and move on. And he inherently is with me and a piece of who I am. I mean, his name is tattooed on me, but I have strength, faith, courage on one wrist, and then blessed and huge script on another wrist, or on the inside of one of my arms. I have a big peacock feather that says serendipity. Because after he died, things serendipitously, amazing things still happened that were good. But Ben Folds was like our song, The Luckiest, by Ben Folds. It's tattooed with a butterfly on each side. It just says the luckiest on my foot. I don't listen to Ben Folds music because it's going to be a downer. It's good because it's like, if I didn't have his name tattooed on my wrist, if I didn't have pictures of him, if I didn't have people in my life that knew him, I've worked so hard to get where I am. I might not believe it happened. It's been 8 years now. And it doesn't mean, and I felt guilty at first, but it doesn't mean I loved him any less or it was any less of an experience, but that was Rachel 1.0. And I've worked very hard to be successful and happy in where I am now. And I could very, very easily go to where, I mean, if you read my book, it's very powerful. It's a very powerful love story of redemption, of me taking that love that I had with him and getting to where I am today. But I could very easily go down that rabbit hole to the grief, to the awfulness, to the illness, images it took me years to get out of my mind. But I don't allow myself to go there because it's not going to help me by any means. What was amazing is the day after he died, I found on the iPad I had bought him, I found a video where he's showing me some tomatoes that the neighbor brought by for him. And then at the end of it, he looks right in the camera and says, "I love you." And it was just a trip to find that the day after he died. So I forever have this video I can play if I want, that I do, a couple times a year. But it's one of those things where I'm just grateful for what I had and it made me into who I am today. But I really just want to get the word out there that you are not alone. And I feel like that's so like singing Michael Jackson, "You are not
I know
alone."
that song understood it like totally.
It did. It did. And I'm just being connected with an insane amount of people that are acknowledging and saying, grief and loss and death and cancer. It's so taboo. And when you're in it, to talk about, when you're in it, you don't really think about it. But I was obsessed with it since we just said that. I was obsessed, just completely off the wall, obsessed with, no pun intended, because that was one of his albums, with Michael Jackson as like a young teen. And unfortunately his brother Tito, Tito's ex-wife in the late 80s was killed. And her sons, 2 out of the 3 of her sons, do a podcast. All 3 of them run a foundation. And I was super obsessed with him, like I said, Michael. And I was on a podcast with Tito Jackson's kids a couple weeks ago. I know. And
so Michael's nephew and niece.
Yeah. His nephews. Yeah.
Nephews.
So it was really crazy because and they asked me to come back to talk about dating this fall, but it's just, I mean, it's really cool. It's a really cool, but crappy club to be a part of. It's really cool to be able to have people like yourself to be able to talk to get the word out there. So it's more normalized, because these really tough things happen and people aren't going to say, hey, there's this podcast or there's this book or there's this whatever, unless you yourself have heard it and you're going to go through it. And I think it's just so cool to have people that are authentically interested in helping people based on the tough stuff they went through themselves. It's very humbling.
Yeah, I'm actually really amazed by the deaf community. Like I found it like on Instagram. And I just cannot, I mean, it's the most lively group, ironically, but I'm just like, there's so much of it. There's so many facets to it. And, I worked in the entertainment industry, and like, I wouldn't think that this world would have this kind of creativity, heart, giving back, sharing like gut-wrenching truths and life. And I love it. That's my favorite stuff to just go down the rabbit hole late at night, is like on my Death Talk podcast Instagram account, like just checking out people's poetry, art, books, like podcast episodes, all of it. It's very impressive. It's really life to me. A lot of other stuff we do is just a bunch of bullshit, but that when
you can use your pain to help other people, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we're all going to face it too. It's like, not like some weird thing like lip implants, where it's like, maybe I might do that. I'm not sure yet, but we're all either I might, the upper lip is getting flat, but anyways, it doesn't matter. The point is yeah. And I just think we're all going to like lose someone, and we're all going to die ourselves. And like, it's just something that, that's the thing. It's as soon as everybody started dying in my life that were really important people to me. And I always say they were like my key Jenga pieces. For me, it was like, I needed to talk about it. So I can understand it, because that's how I work through stuff. And I need to like hear other people talking about it. And nobody in my life really wanted me to talk about it, except for a couple people. But then if it's the people that you shared in common with the person who died, then you start getting into these weird, like, who knew them better, who had better memories, who called them on the last day. Like, I'm not saying everybody does that, but there's always a little bit of that with everybody.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Do you experience any of that? Probably not. You were in the hospital. It's a little bit different.
No, because I was the spouse, but I did find that what was really interesting is it was harder for people to move on and not be super sad that whether it was like my parents or friends or different things. I moved on quicker because I had to, or I would say I not moved on, but I worked harder. I was actively grieving and like, let the healing begin, because I had to do it because I shared a house with this person and their stuff was in it and they weren't coming back. And I had to realize they weren't coming back. The first year, you kind of still have this gut instinct to look at the door and expect them to walk through it. And then the second year is even harder because you're like, yeah, they're not going to walk through the door. But when you're living in a different state and you're just sad that this person is gone and that your daughter's husband, your son is not there, or your brother-in-law is not alive anymore, it's very, very sad. And you're grieving it in a different, less participatory way of, you didn't see it. And for me, it was just like, oh, I have to move on. And for them, it was, But so it was like very different.
For you, it was a total immersion situation. I mean, you were living and breathing it every single day. It's totally different than somebody who maybe isn't even thinking about death at all. But for some, I mean, I remember even before I had my serious big deaths in my life, when I would hear about someone that I knew that died, it would really stick with me. And I think about it a lot. And I don't know if that was my spirit, prepping me for the day that then it would happen in my life. But I remember even if I didn't know them at all, and they were just someone that worked in the building that I worked in or something like that, I would think about them a lot, and it would really kind of affect me deeply. And it's so strange, now I look back and I really see it as like a prep thing. But, so yeah, I don't know. It's weird how some people are affected really deeply and other people are not, or like some people are, like with your situation, it's completely, to me, it makes sense because you were living and breathing so much of it, and you were at the front line and you were doing every single thing. Maybe that's part of it too. You were doing every single thing you could possibly do. And so you have a sense of completion because there's nothing left in the barrel. Like you scraped it in the bottom. And so,
and like after he died, it was so weird. It was like, it was a blizzard the day before. It snowed a couple days after he died, but it's like waiting with my mom for my dad to go get the car. And I'm standing there wanting to run back up to the hospital room, but it's just his body at that point. But it's like for weeks, it was really bizarre because it was like I was a hamster that had been running on the wheel and the wheel was taken away. Oh. And you're just like, now what? But yeah, because there is nothing left. You don't have anything to, I don't have
like
the words
mull over.
Yeah. You're just like, there's I had total closure.
Yeah.
I think that's what's so hard about death, especially ambiguous death, like suicide and things like that, is unfortunately people spend years trying to find why or get closure or all those types of things. And you can't.
Well, my friend was in an abusive relationship, and I was trying to help him he got away from her. She was physically abusive and he was embarrassed to tell anybody. He got away from her, but he wouldn't leave the city. And she was like stalking him. And I said, this is like the most dangerous time when someone leaves someone, and she had threatened to kill him. And so he was meeting a friend in San Francisco at a park. And he was, it was during the day, and he was taking the train, and it's a really nice train station. And he was run over by that train. And no one knows, no one knows how, no one knows what happened.
I'm so sorry for all your losses.
Thank you. The camera that would have shown how he ended up on the tracks, that supposedly didn't work, but the BART Bay Area Rapid Transit's really sketch anyways. And they're just weird about stuff because the police department can't come in and investigate it unless BART signs off on it. But why would they sign off on it? Like it's a conflict of interest. They're not going to say, yeah, we possibly did something wrong, so come on in and check it out. So anyways, we don't know what happened. And yeah, I mean, there came a point where, we were, and I'll never stop thinking about parts of it. Like I'll think about it and I'll think, okay. And that was in August of 2012. And I think, okay, so in 2022, maybe I can go to the train station and have a sign that says, were you there? I don't know what I'm going to do. But
all the woulda, coulda, shouldas are awful.
Yeah. But I feel complete with what I could have done. I feel like, cause I was 100% like, you got to get away from her. I talked to him every night for like a couple months, and I feel complete, but like not knowing what happened, I kind of got caught in that for a while. And then finally one day I just said, I don't know. I may learn some point in the future, but for right now, I've got to work on other parts of this because it's a circle and you never get out of it. So yeah, the closure then had to start happening about, okay, the unknown has happened to me in my life and to other people who left him. How am I going to, what's my relationship going to be with the unknown? That's what it became. Can I just embrace that there's just an aspect of my life that I will not understand probably until I die. So is that okay? Like, can I get past that? So that's what I had to work on for a long time. And I think with like my brother, he died in a hospital. They had an elected surgery. He said, yeah, okay, go ahead. Put me in the induced coma. And nobody thought he was going to die. Like it wasn't even like that. So when his vitals were improving on the next day, and then they were going to get him out of the coma that night. And then they said, let's just wait till Sunday morning. Well, he crashed on Saturday night. And so I know I kind of get a feeling of that feeling of like, there's a difference between my friend who died and me having to do a little bit of mental gymnastics to kind of get over that part of it. versus my brother, who it wasn't like he was camping and a helicopter had to find him in the mountains. He was in a hospital. I mean, he was in the best possible place. So if he crashed there and they tried to revive him and he still died, then I just feel like there's nothing left in that barrel. I don't know what else could have been done. So it does help with the healing when that's kind of the scenario. So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I asked his doctors, like, are you sure there's nothing you can do? And they're like, yeah, no.
Wow.
And it just felt good because, like, he was amazing. He did extra bone marrow biopsies and spinal taps and things just for research to help other people. And then he donated his body to the University of Minnesota. So, I mean, I was just kind of in this shock. And I, like, as I'm holding him and he's dying, I'm not even crying because it's just, I'm so at peace. I mean, obviously I wailed later for years, but it's like I'm at peace knowing they've done everything they can. This is what has to happen. I've been watching it for days. It's like, it's just, there is no saving him, and it just sucks. And it's like, what was tough is for days, I know he's dying and he's going to die. And I just either want to pull the plug then, as crass as that sounds, or I want him to get up and walk out the room with me. And that can't happen. So it was like, you know, just end this. And knowing that they literally did everything they could. And like the virus that was in his bladder, he would have had forever. He'd been on permanent oxygen for like a month. Like there's bodies can only do so much. And that was really comforting in knowing that.
Right. Wow. Well, you're incredible in what you've been through and the fact that you want to give back. And so I just want to ask you my final question. If you did not have a copy of Wife, Widow, Now What with you, and you were abandoned on an island, and someone on the island was like, okay, when I get rescued, I don't know, I'm going too far down that angle, but the point is, what top three things would you share with them? Like if you could only tell someone three things, maybe your elevator pitch to help them navigate the world of cancer of a loved one, what top three things would you tell them?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is that there are people like me. There are resources out there to make you feel less alone. It really is not. What's crazy to think about is there really are millions of people going through this on a daily basis all over the world.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're not alone in it. And like you were saying, it's something everyone is going to have to go through. And I just happen to be someone who wrote it down on paper about how I did it and how you can take nuggets of it to help yourself. So that would be one.
Okay.
Number two would be, you really do need to talk to, whether you talk to someone or you journal it or you write music or you write a poem or you go for a walk. You have to do your own thing for yourself. And it's not always going to make sense to the other people around you in your life, but you have to figure out what makes sense for you. Mm-hmm. You have to figure out the timeline that works for you because you are still living. You are the survivor. So you have to know, today I'm going to wallow in my grief, but tomorrow I'm going to get up and I'm going to do A, B, and C. And even if only A gets done, A got done, and it did get done the day before, but it's getting done today. Those small baby steps. Your loved one left, or, what's really tricky with, I'm going down a little rabbit trail right now, but what's really tricky with grief and loss and death is sometimes really awful people leave or die. And that kind of death is a relief in some ways to people. If it, like you were saying, if it's an abusive relationship or whatever, or a toxic narcissistic parent or whatever that may be. So there's a whole other level of complicated grief, but in the same vein, you're going to need to have to figure out what works best for you and how to heal yourself. And the best way is to just talk about it, access those resources, and make a timeline of how you're going to help yourself.
I like that.
Yeah.
And was that 3?
I guess that's 2. Number 3 is surround yourself with laughter, with positivity. I watched so much of like Friends and Frasier and Roseanne and things that made me belly laugh. I think it's really important what we expose ourselves to. Like we were talking earlier, whether it's positive people, positive music, positive TV shows, there are so many avenues and things out there that are not positive.
Yeah.
But you really do have the choice of what you expose yourself to. And I think that can totally, laughter is addictive. I remember just realizing like, oh my gosh, Rachel, you're pretty funny and you're, and watch that. And it like, you just laugh and you find that life really can be okay despite the really hard stuff, but you do have to work on it and be careful of what you're allowing yourself to be around.
Honestly, it's laughter and naps. I mean,
Oh
those
my
are
gosh,
two so
naps.
healing things, like laughing so hard you're crying. Like sometimes someone will send me a video on YouTube or something, and I'm just like, thank you. Cause it just really gets me out of my head because I can get really lost in there. And it just, laughing and then napping. Two favorite things.
Yeah, when you're little, you don't want to take naps. And when you're older, you're like, oh my gosh, I want to nap.
Oh God, naps are magical.
They are.
Okay, good. Well, then so people can go on Amazon to get your book? Is there any other place they can get your book?
Yep,
Is
it's
that the
just
best
on
place?
Amazon, Wife, Widow, Now What. And you don't have to be going through a tough time or cancer or whatnot. It's very applicable as just a good read to help anybody, or if you want to know what the world's like as far as cancer world or the grief or loss world or all that kind of stuff. So it's in paperback where you can actually write in the budget sheet and different things like that. Or if you get the ebook version, you can click on the hyperlinks and it will take you to all the financial resources and, all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And
cool.
then you can find me Wife, Widow, Now What on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, good. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for speaking with me today, Rachel. I really think you're helping so many people. And I love that. That is the best thing we can expect after something so horrible, is like just to maybe, impart something that helps someone else. So thank you so much for doing this and for putting the book together and just giving back to humanity. I love it. Thank you. And I am sorry that you had to go through what you had to go through to get there, but I think it's great that you've done such a big, huge, great thing like this, like the book.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel. If you would like to share your death story, you can send your death story as a written email, or you can send an audio file of yourself explaining your death story to deathtalkcafe@gmail.com. For more information, you can visit our website at deathtalkpodcast.com. You can also find us on Instagram at Death Talk Podcast and on Twitter, Death Talk Pod. Thank you for listening.